When this week began with the horrific mass shooting in Las Vegas, followed by the horrendous devastation in Puerto Rico, as well as all the other difficult news, I decided to change plans for this worship service. Since this month is our month focused on healing, I felt like we needed to gather for some communal healing and connection. To mourn with those who long for a world with greater peace, safety, and kindness. To be together during such a difficult time and provide a space where we can hug and hold each other amidst the suffering. And to listen to one another's fears and concerns and care for each other. To be seen, to be heard, and be able to cry if we need to. A place where we can acknowledge the tears and shout, "Why?" And simply be held in love. I'd been planning to honor Indigenous Peoples Day today. I was going to talk about how we might make amends to Indigenous people and African Americans who've suffered genocide, enslavement, and oppression for centuries in this country. And of course, this is a hugely important topic and one we shall definitely return to another time. But this week we come together in shock from the worst mass shooting in modern U.S. history. There are many among us who are simply brokenhearted. There's a sense of hopelessness about what's going on in our country and its love of guns. And others are just feeling frozen or numb about yet another senseless shooting with no motive or end in sight. My heart breaks to tell you that there were another 6 mass shootings this week alone. A mass shooting is defined as 3 or more people shot in one incident, and the Las Vegas murder was just one of 6 mass shootings over this past week, shootings that we don't even hear about. America has a mass shooting every day. Every day. We've had 276 so far this year, in 2017 alone. And there have been over 47,000 incidents of gun violence this year, and that number does not include the 22,000 annual suicides by gun. There are on average 90 people killed a day by gun violence in this country. This is an epidemic. What will it take to enact sensible gun laws? I know many of you have asked the same question. If shooting school children in Sandy Hook 5 years ago was not enough to change our laws, what will be? Now, coming from a country where gun ownership is only allowed for hunting and is extremely regulated, it's hard for me to understand this need for the proliferation of guns. How did the right to own guns, particularly military-style assault weapons, become more important than the freedom to go to the movies or a concert or a club safely? I can't imagine that the founding fathers intended the Second Amendment would extend to ending our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They knew the Constitution was going to be a fluid agreement that we'd need to amend from time to time. In fact, it's been amended 27 times. Slavery needed to be revised out of the Constitution. And surely the right to own automatic weapons of mass murder was not their intention. A new study just found that Americans are 10 times more likely to be killed by gun violence than people in other developed countries. And we have the highest incidence of gun-related deaths and the highest number of gun owners and legally purchased guns per person in the world. The two are clearly correlated. Our hearts break at these statistics, at least mine does. Let's just take a moment of silence to hold in mind the many lives destroyed by gun violence. We are worn, we are tired, in our quiet sorrow. Hopelessness will not let us be. Help us. We won't speak of this ache. Inside light eludes us. In the silence of our hearts, we're praying. So in the midst of this heartbreaking world, where do we find spiritual comfort and nourishment? Where do we find hope? I'm grateful I'm not one of those preachers whose theology tells her that this is somehow God's will. Or worse, that God is somehow punishing us for our sins. I'm equally relieved I don't have to promote the New Age philosophy that says these people who were killed and harmed somehow attracted that situation into their lives. That just doesn't make sense to me. What makes sense to me is that evil, the depravity, the cruelty we see in this world is sadly just part of our brutal human nature. Violence seems to be the result of greed, of opportunity, of a desire for power or even mental illness. It's a symptom of our brokenness, of our alienation from one another. It's a symptom of our belief that we are separate and not tied to one another or some higher power. Our universalist theology tells us otherwise. It reminds us that our interconnectedness says we are tied one to the other. The pain and suffering that any one of us experiences affects all of us. Universalism reminds us that at our best, we are the spirit of life and the spirit of love incarnate. It teaches us that if we allow our hearts to break, we do so to be touched and moved to work for a better world. We do so to care more deeply and to love more wholeheartedly. But how can we access love and hope amidst our heartache from devastating events? How do we find redemption and still have faith in goodness and in life? Indeed, how do we find healing amidst the very personal struggles and heartbreak that many among us here face. People right here suffering with illness, with death in their families, with divorce, with unemployment, and a multitude of other challenges. How can we help one another find sanctuary and healing in this community? Now, in the midst of our pain, I want to remind us that many oppressed peoples and refugees live with tragedy, fear, and disaster, and in unsafe conditions all the time, every day. People right here in our communities. I realize as a white Euro-American, I'm extremely privileged to have mostly avoided that daily sense of my life being threatened. But our world is becoming more dangerous for everyone. So it behooves us to turn our attention and our spiritual practices towards fortifying our hearts and building resilience. We need to find new reserves of courage, strength, and compassion, for the road ahead does not look easy, my friends. Fortunately, we have each other in this community. Leslie Haskin was one of the people in the World Trade Center buildings on September 11th when the planes hit. She miraculously escaped just before the building collapsed. But this experience led to a nervous breakdown and severe post-traumatic stress. As she witnessed her own healing over the years, she wrote a book entitled Held to discuss her healing process. She writes, "After 9/11, I boarded my windows and my doors because I was afraid that the Taliban was living in the shed of my backyard. I couldn't go into basements for fear that the ceiling would collapse on top of me. Getting out of bed in the morning was meaningless. I spent a lot of days crying and a lot of nights being sick from crying all day." Leslie writes, as you progress in your personal journey of recovery towards healing, remember that there are no rules here. Right now, it is what it is, and recovery means rebuilding trust. And I would add, rebuilding trust in life. She writes, start from where you are. Travel this road at your own pace. There is hope on the other side of wherever you are right now. You will laugh again. You will dance again and feel joy again. Leslie and other survivors of tragedies have many shared ideas for how to regain joy and meaning in life after tragic loss or trauma. Now, first of all, they recommend that we don't throw ourselves into every detail of a tragedy, reliving it on TV or online, in newspapers or in our imaginations. Take a break from it. Lots of breaks. It doesn't mean you're more compassionate because you read and watch every piece of news on a tragedy. Take care of yourself. Even observing a distressing event on television and witnessing the troubling images can cause a traumatic stress response. And research shows that our bodies can't distinguish stress that happens to another person from what happens to us directly. We register that stress internally either way. Trauma disrupts our brain and the ability to feel, to make decisions, and to act. It unbalances the brain, sometimes for a long time. Now, any of you who've experienced the loss of a loved one, or who've been diagnosed with a major illness, or who've lived through trauma firsthand, will know that sense of fog in your brain, which makes it hard to focus and prioritize. Everything feels cloudy and muddled. A wise friend once told me that the brain acts like it's under the influence of alcohol at those times. It's not a good time to do a lot of driving or make important decisions. On the contrary, slow down. Slow down and take care of yourself. Allow yourself to grieve. Accept your feelings. Don't deny or fight them. This is so important for healing. In fact, ignoring or denying your feelings can slow recovery. If we numb how we feel, these feelings may come out another way. Allow the crack in your heart, the pain you are feeling, to bring in more love. Allow it to soften your heart, to understand the pain of the human condition. Mahatma Gandhi said that in the midst of death, life persists. And in the midst of untruth, truth persists. And in the midst of darkness, light persists. For healing to happen, we must turn our minds and attention to something life-giving and positive. Look for the beauty around you. There's so much beauty everywhere. Don't let the pain obscure that. Take time to reflect on a beautiful flower or a stunning vista or a simple baby's smile. And equally important is to take pleasure in the normal, the mundane. Find time to meditate, do yoga, sing or pray. Engage in spiritual practices that nourish you. Connect with your sense of the sacred and participate in healing rituals. Relax and engage in activities that bring you joy, that make you laugh. Use art or movement or music to explore and express what you are experiencing internally. As many of you know, I really like to dance. It frees me to feel incredible joy. Getting moving is also a really important way to combat stress held in the body. And I found this particularly significant when I was working as a hospice chaplain and dealing with death on a daily basis. Dancing helped me move the sorrow out of my body and helped me feel my aliveness. Just like the Taylor Swift song, "Shake it off, shake it off." Do that with me for a moment, right here in your seats. Let's just shake all this heaviness off. Wave your arms, wriggle your bodies, shake it off. Doesn't that feel better? And above all, don't feel guilty for doing things that bring you joy despite your sorrow. Joy is needed to counteract the pain and aid in the healing. And goodness knows, joy is needed in our world right now. I've heard stories of people firsthand feeling guilty the first time they went out dancing or the first time they laughed heartily after a loved one's death. Finding places to experience joy and laughter in life is a key component of healing. It's a different kind of release that can help us let go of things that are harder to discharge in grief. Have you ever watched a film and started crying quietly, moved by the story on the screen? Anyone? Well, I get this way a lot. And have you noticed that if there is a light-hearted moment that follows, how hearty the laugh can be? Almost disproportionate. Grief, joy, and laughter are all complementary releases, each with their own kind of healing. Most importantly, my friends, be in community. Spend time with friends and family. Be here. We are your community and your new community for all those who are new today. Come to church, join our chalice circles or our men's and women's groups. Volunteer, and you'll reap the rewards of an extremely loving and caring community. Holding and hugging each other is important in moments of grief. And a good hug not only feels supportive and great, but it releases all kinds of good chemicals in the body like oxytocin and dopamine. If you feel alone, be sure to reach out to someone in this community. And come talk to me. My door is open to you. I'll help you connect if you're too shy to do it on your own. And we are here for you. You are here for us, and we are here for each other. Connection provides deep healing in times of trauma or distress. One of our newest members, a therapist, wrote to me this week that she knew someone who waited in line for 7 hours in Las Vegas on Monday to give blood. 7 hours. I'll read more of what she wrote. She continued, "It's a way for my friend to process what had happened in her city and do her part for complete strangers. She talked about waiting in line and having strangers bring them pizzas and waters. She started to feel a bit better. Why? Connection. She saw so much good in her city, and she felt connected to others in the face of all of this grief. Grief takes time," she writes. "You can't snap your feelings and say, 'Oh, I'm healed.' Connection with others begins the healing process, and grieving together really helps. It's amazing how effective group therapy is for healing in times of heartache." But another piece of this person's recovery was that she chose to serve, to do something positive in the face of tragedy. Positive physical action can help overcome feelings of fear, helplessness, and hopelessness. Work for sensible gun laws or bring food to affected families. Write to your congresspeople or give hugs to people in shock. Do something that allows you to challenge your sense of helplessness or frozenness. Look beyond yourself to help in the larger picture. You will feel better in the process. You will. Healing is about restoring the mind, the body, and the soul to wholeness. It's about finding ways to re-engage with life. It's trusting in life again. It's about getting back to noticing the good and beautiful around you. It's about expressing your feelings, and it's about being patient. When times are tough, I invite us to be deliberate about looking for the good. I invite us to intentionally celebrate beauty, cultivate joy, and serve the greater good. I invite us to come together in community, to help each other heal, to hug one another, to listen to each other, to laugh, and to offer each other healing wishes. May love, once again, break our hearts open wide. Amen. So we're going to take a moment now to share our healing wishes for our world, for our country, for each other, and for our families. What intentions or prayers do you want to put out into the universe for healing? What do you want to say to people who are hurting or people who are sick? These wishes are going to be posted on our art wall in Fellowship Hall for this month so that we can look at them again and again, and we can create an environment of healing. Our community is going to be enveloped in a blanket of healing wishes. And if you haven't seen our art wall next door, I invite you to go into Fellowship Hall and look at the back and share with us your drawings, your ideas, your poetry, your doodles, anything that inspires this theme of healing in you. Ushers are going to pass around baskets with paper and pens. And please take a moment to reflect on what healing wish you would like to put forth and then write it down. When you've written your wish, please come up and post it on one of our 2 cork boards on the chancel. And if you'd prefer not to come up on the chancel and feel too fragile to manage the stairs, you can leave your wish with a worship associate who'll be at the foot of the stairs, or hand it to someone else to put up for you. And then please return your pens to the baskets or our worship associates as you come up. So I invite you, as soon as you have had a chance to write your healing wish, to come on up.